Hello and welcome. Today we're going to dive into a topic that can make or break any survey, test, or questionnaire. We're talking about how to make sure people actually understand the questions you're asking.
You know the feeling, right? We've all been there. You're trying to give some decent feedback, but the question is just a mess. It's full of jargon, or maybe you could read it in three completely different ways. And yeah, it's frustrating for you, but for the person who created that survey, that confusion is a way, way bigger problem.
It's a huge problem. Because think about it, if your questions are confusing, the data you get back is, well, it's pretty much useless. Let's break down exactly why.
So here's the bottom line. When your questions are ambiguous, your data becomes unreliable. You might think you're measuring, say, customer satisfaction, but your respondents are answering some totally different question they've just made up in their own heads. The entire goal of your research, it just goes right out the window.
Okay, so how do we fix this? How do we avoid this trap? Well, luckily, there's a systematic process the pros use to make sure everything is crystal clear. And it goes by a couple of key names you'll want to know.
The official, super academic term is response process validity. And our source material points out that this is actually one of 5 key types of validity evidence. But all it really means is getting inside the user's head to see if they're thinking about your questions the same way you are.
But here's the term you'll hear way more often, face validity. And this is the crucial part. It's not about what a panel of experts thinks, it's about how the questions look and feel to the actual people taking the test. Do the questions seem relevant to them? Do they make sense right away, on the surface? That's what face validity is all about. All right, the theory is great, but how do you actually do this? Well, the source material lays out a fantastic, practical 6-step playbook. So let's walk through it together. So here's the roadmap. First, we prepare a validation form. Then we pick a panel of people to review it. We run the validation, we get their feedback, we score everything, and then we calculate something called the Face Validity Index, or FVI. So step 1 is all about getting prepared. You're going to create a validation form, kind of like the one you see in this example. Notice how the instructions are super clear. They explain the whole task and the 4-point rating scale for clarity and comprehension. And then, right below that, each item is laid out ready to be reviewed. Okay, let's keep things moving. For the next few steps, you'll need to select at least 10 raters, and they have to be from your target audience, not a bunch of experts. Then you can run the validation either in person or online, ask for specific comments to help you improve the wording, and then have them score each item using that 4-point scale.
And now for the really cool part. How do we take all of that qualitative feedback and turn it into a single, powerful number? This is where we get to calculate the Face Validity Index, the FVI.
Take a look at this table. This is our sample data. We've got 10 raters and their scores for 12 different questions. Now, the first thing we have to do is recode these scores. It's simple. If a rating is a 3 or a 4, meaning clear or very clear, it becomes a 1. Anything else, a 1 or a 2, becomes a 0. That's it. So to figure out the score for just one item, we call that the IFVI. We just look at what proportion of raters thought it was clear. Let's take question 2 here. As you can see, 9 out of the 10 raters gave it that recoded score of 1, which means they agreed it was clear. And the math from here is about as easy as it gets. We just divide the number of raters who agreed, which was 9, by the total number of raters, which is 10, and that gives us an IFVI score of 0.9 for this one item. But what about the entire survey? That's what we really want to know, right? Well, for that, we calculate the SFVI/AV, which is just the average of all those individual item scores. In our example data, that comes out to 0.91, which is a very strong score, by the way. Now, if you want an even stricter measure, you can use the SFVI/UA, which stands for Universal Agreement. This one looks at the proportion of items where every single rater agreed it was clear. In our example, 10 out of the 12 items got a perfect score from everyone, giving us a value of 0.83. So, we've walked through the what, the why, and the how. But let's just take a step back and look at the big picture here. Why go through all this trouble in the first place? Because at the end of this whole process, you don't just feel like your questions are good. You have actual quantitative evidence. You have a number that proves your tool is clear, understandable, and ready for the real world. That gives you incredible confidence in the data you're about to collect. And as the author of our source material puts it, this process is absolutely vital. It's not some optional extra step. It is a foundational piece for building any kind of assessment that you can actually trust.
So, the next time you need to ask people questions, you've got the playbook. You know exactly how to make sure those questions are understood. The only question left is the one on your screen. How will you validate your next big idea?